again, our relationship with that term and with these people known as billionaires is a complicated one.
There's the old saying that capital is a coward. It goes it goes where it feels most safe.
Senator Schumer said, we're going to run our campaign in 2026 and we're going to go after billionaires. In a nutshell, I don't think going after billionaires is a wise political strategy at all.
Populism, as I have always said, is here to stay. And that the Trump administration could be fueling that, especially to come back on the side of the left.
Hi, it's another Friday, and that means it's another edition of Real Polling in Real Time with Zogby. Of course, I should say with the Zogbys, right? Because, as always, my son Jeremy is with me. How you doing?
We should call it the real polling in real time with the House of Zogby.
The House of Zog. I like it. All right, that's what it is from now on. Because we also happen to be at our houses too. So, okay. Andrew Carnegie was the world's first billionaire. And from that day forward, Americans' relationship and views of billionaires have been very, very complicated. And suffice it to say that by and large, despite the best efforts of the left and at times right-wing populism, Americans really just don't have a negative view or overly negative view of billionaires until our most recent polling. We have polled about attitudes towards billionaires now for a few decades. And what we have found up to now is that people view billionaires as fortunate, as lucky, as generous, as leaders, and so on, and don't necessarily automatically categorize them as cheats or greedy or corrupt or so on until now. And we thought it was a good idea to reprise some of the polling that we've done today because billionaires are in the news a lot. And in fact, just recently, not only Bernie Sanders, but Senator Schumer appeared on a call with the Democratic National Committee and said, we're going to run our campaign in 2026 and we're going to go after billionaires. And I know I was stunned when he said that because I seem to think that Americans have other things on their mind than going after billionaires. But again, our relationship with that term and with these people known as billionaires is a complicated one. And we've got some new polling data. You have some concepts and some numbers, but it reveals that by and large, from a tilt towards more positive view of billionaires, there's rather a nuanced, mixed view, and that some of the negatives that people hold about billionaires have actually climbed, while some of the positives have gone down. So what can you tell us? By and large, are billionaires viewed as corrupt, selfish, greedy, or are they by and large viewed as generous leaders, fortunate people?
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember the earlier polling and what you talked about as far as the more positive attributes of genius and role model and lucky and blessed, and that tended to be the terms that voters more associated and in larger percentages. And then, as you've said, it's flipped. And I mean, there's some historical forces. I mean, first and foremost, in the present, I don't think that there's been an administration with a greater representation than this one. I mean, I may be exaggerating here, but it seems like half of the admin are stacked with billionaires. But what adds more to that is, no doubt about it, the growing information sphere that is the internet, and more reports and more documentaries that delve into the histories. I mean, when I was a kid, as you mentioned, we learned about Carnegie, and Carnegie gifted us the poor man's university, the public libraries, and all this philanthropy. But a lot has come out in the past couple decades about what were behind the motives of philanthropy, and we don't need to get into that, but that there were more sinister things going on in terms of evading taxes and hiding money and influencing. And so it's very relevant because now our government is packed with billionaire interest class. And what do Americans think about that? So just looking at those classic attributes that we have voters rank about billionaires, the top five are all negative: greedy, selfish, shrewd. Well, shrewd is could be positive, I guess, but also negative. Ruthless and corrupt. And anywhere from half of voters to 3/5 of voters say that that's an accurate description. And then the bottom five, that is lucky, blessed, leader, genius, and role model, all fall off a cliff. And, that just tells us that, there's this populism on the right and the left, as you suggested, especially on the right. Bernie's bringing it back, the kind of the Occupy Wall Street mentality. And I think that populism, as I have always said, is here to stay. And that the Trump administration could be fueling that, especially to come back on the side of the left. But of course, we're just talking about attributes, but we actually have some data on actual billionaires and what voters think about that. And so I'll kick off the first one, and then you go, and then we can interchange. But we'll start with ranking. The one who comes out on the top with the most positive ratings, and this is using the favorable, unfavorable rating. Number one is Warren Buffett. 57% say that they're favorable of Warren Buffett, and only 21% say they're unfavorable. That's a hell of a net positive favorable ratio. Of course, this goes across party. And when I drill down to demographics, particularly highest among men, among suburban voters, and those earning more than $100,000 in income, those actually go beyond 60% favorable. Now, I have a reason why I think Warren Buffett comes out on top, but let's go through the others first, and that'll make more sense in this ranking.
Yeah, sure. By and large, Bill Gates is favorable. Bill Gates has, to a great degree, successfully changed his legacy away from mainly the cutthroat, tough, competitive businessman who led Microsoft to the Gates Foundation. He's taken a hit, needless to say, with his relationship, we'll put that in quotes, with Jeffrey Epstein, but he's 53% favorable and 35% unfavorable. He performs better among Democrats, and that is because I think he's particularly viewed in that light as being either nonpartisan or tilting liberal. Now, the next billionaire in the news is the man really who dominates the news, and that's Elon Musk. And there we have a flip. Almost the exact opposite numbers. 39% favorable for Elon Musk, 52% unfavorable. And of that 52, 41, 4/5 of the unfavorables are very unfavorable, hugely negative among Democrats. 68% of Republicans are favorable, but only 32% of independents are favorable. And that's where I think we get into the political issue, don't we? Of more than just the view of billionaires is the view of this billionaire. and his position, unique position in this administration.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's absolutely spot on. That this is where the political polarization rears its ugly head. 68% of Republicans rating Musk favorable. A world of a difference. Of course, looking at the media consumers, the legacy media consumers, 30% view Musk favorable. That's probably the Fox News folks. And then looking at the new media followers, that is those who trust most podcasts and social media, of course, a large share of which is going to be X, Musk's platform, 53% view favorably. And yeah, I mean, so we've gone from Warren Buffett, who has a net positive view among voters, almost 3/5 of voters, down to Bill Gates, a little bit over half. As you suggested, Bill Gates used to be higher. I think probably a lot of that coming from more negative coming from conservatives and Republicans because of COVID and his involvement with the Gates Foundation. As you suggested, maybe too, the what unearthed with the Epstein files. And then dropping off the cliff to Elon Musk. We'll make a mention of our number 4.
Yeah,
although,
that's a significant one.
yeah, George Soros, of course. But we have to say that although he has a 20% favorable rating and a 40% unfavorable rating, still about 40% don't know who he is. That means 20% are not sure and 20% don't know, to actually say they're not familiar. And so he's blanketed by that. So that he's deeply in the negative territory, but he's blanketed by the fact that a lot of people just don't really know much about him.
Yeah. The fascinating thing is that Soros has been Diablo as far as the right is concerned. And as much as candidates, the party itself, policies could be attributed to Soros and a foreign conspiracy. And, let's be honest, an ethnically related foreign conspiracy. He's been out there in the news, and it's so surprising that he's not so much in the news. Of course, it's dominated by Trump and Elon Musk. But that, as you point out, 40% don't know enough about who he is. And going to be very difficult, and I'm going to steer the conversation in this direction, to make a political campaign about any of these billionaires. Because on one hand, the Democrats may say we're going to go after billionaires, but the evidence just isn't there. And then there's always the Warren Buffett and the Bill Gates, who are seen more as benign figures. So the term billionaire is too sweeping. On the other hand, as far as the right is concerned, very hard. Well, they can make a case focusing on a George Soros, who's not the lightning rod that he once was, standing right in the middle, blocking that effort against billionaires, of course, is Elon Musk, and what many would regard, including independents, as overreach by that billionaire. In a nutshell, I don't think going after billionaires is a wise political strategy at all.
I mean, that's an astute point, and that kind of matches up with my verdict overall. I agree to just make the blanket statement going after billionaires is problematic. Of course, on the economic side, there's the old saying, the economic and investment side, there's the old saying that capital is a coward. It goes where it feels most safe. And that's a little bit tongue in cheek, there's a little bit of humor in that saying. It's, in other words, are you really that much of a coward if you feel that the guns are being pointed at you, especially by politicians? Those with money are going to leave and go where other nations in this big world are going to welcome them. And so pushing too much of that agenda can actually backfire, and the country can be hollowed out that way. So that, to your point, could be something that Bernie may want to just, message test a little bit better. And so the verdict is this. The verdict, I think, is clear when we look at all these numbers. Billionaires are fine if there is the public perception that they're just doing their thing in investing and getting wealthier and giving back to the community. But once they cross over into the world of politics, as Elon Musk has, and as George Soros has, that's when we see that their numbers tank. And that's how we got to this point, because there's a lot of history, as I suggested in the opening of the podcast, that's being uncovered about the Rockefeller family, the Morgan family, even the Carnegies, and how they were taking their wealth and their investment, and they were finding themselves into influencing government, policy, research, and legislation. And the more people know about that, they don't like it. So if you're a billionaire, just stick to making widgets and providing services and getting wealthy that way. Crossing over into the world of politics is probably not going to help your image.
No, and the final thought on my end is that the problem, and this is aimed mainly at Democrats, the problem with attacking billionaires is that it's a two-step, meaning if we can tax them more and make them pay their fair taxes, then we can do this for you. And the if-then does not work in politics. You have to go directly to voters and say, this is what I've done for you. This is what I'm going to do for you next. Once you begin it with, if we can, people are just fundamentally distrusting and find it unbelievable. That's why, in some respects, I think Donald Trump has the upper hand, because he's not wasting any time with the if I can do this. He's gone right, jumped on the payloader and just mowed right through, and he's doing, as opposed to saying, if I could. Now, he's being stopped by the courts, but he's having, some success, at least so far. But anytime you have to say, I have to do this first in order for me to get to you, you lose people. It's not a bumper sticker anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well, I think that about does it on my end. How about you?
It does it on my end. We do want to remind people, as you always do, that if you need our services, which means not just generating data, but going through that data and explaining to you what it means, how it serves you, how you can market better and communicate better, strategize better, then go to our website, John Zogby Strategies, and press the contact button. If you want to know how to read polls, there is my book. And that is also, you can find that on our website, johnzogbystrategies.com, or of course on Amazon.
And share this podcast, share it as wide as you can. Tell others about it, that we're on a lot of the platforms, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. As you suggested, it's on our website, on the podcast button. And this is what we do. We give context and meaning to the data, as well as strategies. And I think actually, if billionaires were to tune in, they would probably want to know more after hearing this podcast. This is just scratching the surface in what we can do with data.
Okay, have a good week.